Hello, welcome to Wild Wisdom. Today is a very special episode. I'm joined by a very good friend of mine. We're going to call him Chris. That's not his real name. We're redacting his name to save face on all characters involved in his story, which is all about his life as someone who was adopted and who eventually grew up to a search for his biological parents. And we're going to be talking about his experiences, although we're going to be focusing on more the mother's side. We'll be leaving the father's side out for now. Say hello, Chris.
Hello.
We're going to just jump right in, basically. Tell me about your earliest experience about learning that you were adopted. What kind of environment did you grow up in?
2 kids, 2 parents, 2-bedroom house. Just a normal family to look at from the outside. It's something I've always known about ever since I can remember, really, is knowing that I was always adopted. Back to about the age of 4 or 5. It's just something that I've always known about, always lived with.
You explained to me, because we've talked about this before, where you didn't feel all that much from your adopted parents. Do you think that was linked to the fact that you were adopted?
Yeah, I mean, it all kind of comes back to that. It's strange because growing up, you don't know any different. And it's the same with any family, whatever situation you're in, whether you're a one-parent family or 2 or whatever. It just is what it is when you're growing up. And you just take that for granted, and you don't really look and see any difference until you've lived a bit more life yourself. As we've gone on, I had your own kids. It's just strange now looking back and now having all the information that I didn't have in the first place. And I know a lot of people do tend to have a good life, they have a good family life, even being adopted or fostered. But yeah, I mean, it's not always the case. I mean, mine, they were nice enough to look at on the outside, but there wasn't a lot beneath the surface. Not a great deal of love shown within the family home, which again, just growing up, I thought that was normal. And it's only since I'm now older, got my own kids, again, experience a lot more life, that I understand that that's not the way it should be. And it's just looking back and finding out more information as I've been looking for sort of my birth family as well. It's brought up a lot of relative information to do with my adoptive parents, and just almost like the foundation of their relationship and how rocky it was even before they adopted me. Yeah, it just puts things into perspective a bit more.
Your adopted parents passed away, obviously, a few years back. Your father was a few years back.
Yeah.
And then your mother was quite recent. Obviously, it would be silly to suggest that that didn't spur you on to find your biological parents.
It definitely helped. And I think you'll probably find that with a lot of adopted people feel the same. Of you almost feel like you're being a bit sort of dishonest or not appreciative enough of the adoptive family that's taken you in and brought you up and put a roof over your head.
It's a delicate topic to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we never talked about it very much as a family. I think it was mentioned, I mean, obviously early in life because I always knew, but then something else was said in my teenage years of my mum being supportive if I ever wanted to search for my birth family. But it wasn't something I felt I could ever go forwards and do, because as much as they said they would support me, I knew it was still going to hurt them, and that was just something I wasn't willing to do. So, I mean, since they've passed away, it has become a lot easier just to make that move and that jump forward.
It feels like a natural step as well, in terms of you searching and all that kind of thing. Would you say that you rebelled a bit as you were growing up, though? Is that sort of putting it lightly?
Yeah, so we've known each other a long time, so I was quite rebellious as a teenager. Didn't spend a lot of time in the house. Was always out and about. I moved out home by 15. Started living my own.
Do you think that you would have still acted so rebelliously if you had grown up with your original parents?
Probably not as rebelliously, but they were two very different class of people. I mean, as much as my adoptive parents, they looked really nice, dressed well, spoke well, acted well. They both came from nothing. Do you know what I mean? My adoptive father, he actually came from the Gorbals up in Scotland, and my mother's family, they were Irish immigrants. And again, had literally no money, do you know what I mean, growing up. But they just kind of almost put on an act. Do you know what I mean? The house was always perfect. It didn't ever feel lived in. I mean, you used to come round as a kid as well.
Yeah, I'd be afraid to sit down.
So was I, but I had to live there as well. Yeah, it's like, everything had its place. Nothing could be touched. It was always like living in a showroom, basically. I definitely feel I would have felt a lot more just at home and where I was supposed to be. Even though they're a lot poorer, do you know what I mean, they come from quite a deprived area. But so I just kind of clicked with them straight away and just fitted in like I'd always been there. Very strange, very surreal feeling.
Obviously, this was something that you had sitting on the back shelf for 40 years plus, and it comes to a point where you want to know and you want to find out, and so you start. I don't remember how it all started out. I think you started off just by researching on your own, didn't you?
Yeah, basically, just started off. Didn't have a lot of information to go on. Literally had a one piece of paper from the adoption agency, and all it had was their rough age of both parents at birth and their names. That was it. That's all I had to go on.
I remember us going on to that website, the family sort of history, ancestry.com, and we could literally find only 2 entries for each name, and I remember thinking how bizarre that was.
Yeah, obviously I was born just in London because I didn't have enough information to go on. Obviously I started looking around the sort of area that I was born in and trying to make links through that. Weirdly, one of them did actually link up later on after I'd met the birth family. But at the time, it just didn't kind of click into place quite right. It was a difficult thing to start to search for. I mean, I'd gone out, I'd thought I'd actually found my birth mother and perhaps 2 sisters as well.
They looked so much like you, which was quite odd as well. I remember you finding images on Facebook of them, and they looked quite similar to you.
Yeah, that was a scary thing. It was like instantly sort of seeing a likeness to us. Yeah. And even that was hell, as you saw. I mean, I ended up having to write out a letter, had her address and everything, went over, posted it. Weeks later, I then just received a phone call back stating that, yeah, she wasn't my birth mother, which I didn't know whether it was true or not at the time. So I was quite heartbroken. And at that point, I just kind of thought, I can't just do this on my own now. It just hurt too much. It was like being rejected again. And yeah, that's where I decided to actually find the adoption agency and contact them directly.
You did that like a year before something actually happened. I think a year went past and you sort of called them up again asking if there was any updates, right?
Yeah, I think due to COVID and all the rest of it happening, it just put everything back. Obviously, there was a lot of working from home, and it was only a small team that worked within the sort of adoption agency itself anyway. And yeah, I kind of went on there, left my details. They emailed back and said, yes, we do have a file that matches that name. And yeah, nearly a year went past, hadn't heard anything, chased them up and started phoning them. Which actually they bumped me up to the top of the list. But then strangely enough, it turned out my birth mother had started looking for me and had contacted the agency around the same time as well.
Which is just mind-blowing. We'll touch up on about that a bit later on, but that was literally mind-blowing, the fact that she had looked for you. decided to look for you at the same time. Relatively, it was like within the space of a month or two.
There's only been a few cases where that's ever happened. One of the counsellors was speaking to me, a separate one was speaking to my birth mother. We ended up writing a few letters to each other as well over the coming months.
The first letter you got from your original mother, I just want to sort of touch on, because the picture that she painted, we should sort of, just add a brief sort of explanation of what life would have been like. And this would have been, late 70s, early 80s, up in sort of an area south of Glasgow, and very much an industrial town at the time. But since that whole sort of market has gone, and people have seen dollar signs and gotten greedier and moved off elsewhere, whatever. But there's a community that's left there, and at the time, obviously, because it's a very religious town, they would have believed in marriage, and as a community, obviously, at the time, you had a child out of wedlock, it was frowned upon and that kind of thing, wasn't it? So to sort of having that as the background, and understanding what your mum went through to get all of this is just should never have happened. But I mean, without going into relative specifics, give the gist of what she had explained in that letter, because it was literally heart-wrenching.
After reading it, I mean, first thing I wanted to do was just give her a big huddle. That's all I wanted to do, was just hug her. She's been in a relationship for about 6 months with my father, and that had ended. And a few months later, she actually realised she was 4 months pregnant with me. She told her family, who sort of strong Catholic family, but they lived in a 2-bedroom house. They had 7 kids, ranging from 23 down to about 7. So yeah, not a lot of money coming in. They basically just ended up, all the aunties had a meeting, decided what was best for her. They literally just fitted her up with a big duffel coat, made sure it was fitted so that she didn't look like she was pregnant. A bag was packed, and she was then taken by her father that same day down to an auntie and uncle's house here in England. And yeah, basically just dumped there until she gave birth to me.
And she tried every way to keep it. It's something that's hard to swallow in today's day and age, because with all the help that is out there for single parent mums and stuff, and the fact that it wasn't there at the time is tragic. And this sort of thing really does happen all the time, doesn't it? And when it happens to you and your family, it hits home. And I remember getting emotional for you. It all goes very well. The first communication through the agency, and it comes to a point where you arrange to meet up in the new year, being 2022 January. This has just recently sort of happened, and arranged time to go up and meet her in Scotland.
That's right. Yeah, just literally a few weeks ago now. Absolutely crazy experience. Brilliant. I mean, better than I ever could have dreamt it being. It was just, as soon as we met, we saw each other, we just hugged, and there was just instant love there. I met my younger sister, a couple of uncles and an auntie, and it was so strange. It was like I'd always been there. And I think because they had talked about me a lot, I'd never been a secret to them within the family. It was like every birthday that came up, every Christmas, I was always spoken about a lot. Yeah, and I just felt instant sort of connection with them. Just crazy to look and see where you get certain traits and looks from, and personality-wise.
Yeah, that must have been a really odd experience to walk into. I mean, what would have been strangers to you, but within a space of half an hour to an hour, you just gel, down to the body language, down to the way you talk, the sense of humour, everything, right?
I think it was within the first few minutes, especially with my uncle. I think he tried to be on good behaviour, lasted about maybe 5 minutes, and his personality started coming out, and we just clicked. As you know, I've always had a pretty good sense of humour.
We share a very sort of dark sense of humour, just because it's funny, and whatever. The fact that you guys clicked was awesome as well. So obviously we've been back for up to about a week now, isn't it? So you've had time to sort of soak it all in a little bit. What are your plans for the year with them? Are you gonna meet up and do some stuff?
Yeah, really looking forward to it. I mean, we've been on the phone to each other most days, or texting as well, video calling. So yeah, it's just been lovely. I'm sure that'll settle down a bit over this like almost honeymoon period at the second. So everything's sort of amazing. But yeah, it'll just be nice to spend some more time with them. I spent a week up there getting to know them a bit, but it didn't feel like long enough.
Yeah, it wasn't enough, was it?
No, but I don't think however long I spent with them, never would have felt long enough. I mean, we've got so much time to make up. But yeah, they're just lovely, lovely people, and I can't wait. I should be back there in about 6 weeks' time, and then taking my family up the month after as well. We've already got things booked in for this Christmas to spend it all together. So yeah, just really, really looking forward to it.
I just want to sort of touch upon the whole mysticism behind all of this, just because it's, what really blows me away is the fact that 42 years, it's not 40 years, it's not 35 years, just at a random year, you both decide to start seeking each other out. And yes, it's like 6 weeks, 8, a couple of months apart. But the very fact that you did it at that particular time period is mind-blowing to me. And the fact that it all went really well, it just makes me think that there's a whole sort of system at work behind the screens that we don't really sort of get or understand. It's a good experience to sort of be a part of, and I'm glad to have helped you through it at the very least. And you now have a family, and it's one of those things where that's not the case for everyone. It can go very wrong, but being true to yourself, staying true to yourself, and always lying in hope and praying that if you are in a similar situation, that it will go right for you. If you're understanding as a person and you're patient and you're kind, but you don't let people walk over you, then you are going to be in a generally good state, as has been shown here.
I mean, I think it's something that I've always had the urge to find out. It's always been part of me, and I'm really, really glad I did. I mean, as you know, I did set my bar really low, of even if I didn't meet any of them and I just found out a bit more background information, just having a bit more knowledge would have just ticked off some boxes for me, and I would have been able to just kind of put it to bed and move on a bit with life. But yeah, I say it just went smoother and just so much more than I ever could have dreamt. But as you know, I never kind of got my hopes up too much for it, because it would have just been too far to fall, and I just couldn't have dealt with that, to be quite honest.
What would you say to other people who are in your situation who don't know who their biological parents are?
I would recommend not doing any kind of searching yourself. Don't go onto social media and try and find things out that way, because you could end up being steered completely the wrong direction, and sometimes just seeing things that you want to see, even when they're not there. I would take the information that you've got that you know is concrete, so whichever adoption agency you came through or foster agency, go direct through them. They will have your file, they will have a lot more information than you've probably already got. They'll be able to just pace it just nicely for you, give you a better overview, a lot more support as well. Go for counselling if you can. I mean, personally, I found that really, really helped me. And yet, like I say, I'm just one of the lucky ones that it went the way it did. As we know, not everyone is as lucky with their outcome, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, that's the whole tragedy of it. I think that, it doesn't work for some people, and for others it does. And I think in your situation, you were very lucky. So there you have it, really. It just goes to show that if you hold to hope, then good things can happen to you in your life. So thank you very much for joining me, Chris.
Thank you for having me on the podcast today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Until next time, everyone, I will see you later. Have a good one.